Testing. Hi. Hi. How are you? Nice to see you. Welcome, everyone. My name is Wendy Wyman, and I'm the Director of Programming for Fotografiska, New York. Thank you. It's nice to see so many familiar faces. On now in the museum, Hip-Hop Conscious Unconscious. Conscious Unconscious explores the people, places, and things that hip-hop has delivered to all of us for the past 50 years. Together with Mass Appeal, Fotografiska has created the definitive destination to celebrate hip-hop's global impact on visual expression in an immersive experience, bringing together a community of artists that have documented this cultural phenomenon. We'd like to express our gratitude to our lead exhibition partner, Chase Marriott Bonvoy Credit Card, for their exhibition support and programming. I want to thank and welcome you all to tonight's panel, Cannabis and Hip-Hop Education, Empowerment and Equity. And to introduce the panel, I'd like to welcome our friend Ariel Palitz to the stage, the founding director, Office of Nightlife, the City of New York.
Thank you, Wendy. Mic check. Hello. Hey, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here today. Some of you may know me as the founding director of New York City's Office of Nightlife. Some of you may know me as the founding owner of Sutra Lounge from back in the day. But today we're really here, and in all the positions, it's really about holding a space, right, for important conversations, an important conversation about an important moment in time. And, you know, much like owning a nightclub or working in the mayor's office, a lot of people just think it's about the party or it's about making rules and laws, but really everything that we do and should be doing is about making sure that there's fairness and justice and equity and accessibility, and that everything that we do is done with the best of intentions and with heart and soul. And so whether it be owning Sutra, creating a common ground for diverse expression, creating an office of nightlife, owning a club, owning a museum, it's really about making sure that as we move forward, we don't forget the past, and that we are really here to make sure that everyone is getting the information about where we've come from and where we need to go. And so what better way to do that than at the Fotografiska Museum at the celebration of the 50th anniversary of hip-hop, with some of the greatest names in the game. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you the great people here on this stage that are going to be embarking in this conversation with us today. So please welcome to the stage the one and only Fab Five Freddy, Dashida Dawson, founding director of the Office of Cannabis, M1 from Dead Prez, Shice Bubs, Umi from Legacy. Thank you so much.
Check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Everybody's microphone is working?
Yeah. 1, 2.
Good. Good evening, all. How's everybody? My name is Mutulu Olugbala, a.k.a. M1, one half of the Tell It Like It Is. Everything is political rap duo Dead Prez. I'm more than happy to be convening and moderating this particular panel for Fotografiska in this amazing environment where we can celebrate not only 50 years of hip-hop, but 50 years of cannabis and 50 years of culture going forward. So thank you all for being here. You could have been anywhere else, but you're here. So thank you for your time, first of all. I won't belabor the panel anymore. We've introduced ourselves. I think anyone who, is following what's happening with the pulse of the people and has their ear to the streets knows that we've come a long way as it relates to the war on drugs and our people. And I say our people in a very interesting way because we can frame it as hip hop, but hip hop is code word for black and brown culture, for African culture. And so when you talk about that war on drugs that we've experienced, it came a long way. And with that being said, we have encountered a new day. We're at a time where we're moving from a legacy or black market or prohibition for weed, that's what we called it, weed, to the legalization of cannabis, especially in NYC. And that conversation on top of what has happened and what our experience has been in New York City has been an interesting one, to say the least. But I think we're here to discuss that in all its demeanor. I think there's a lot of things that we can talk about. I gotta say, Fab Five Freddy, for me, you have been amazing in laying out clearly the path of how our culture intertwines with cannabis. And I want to start with you. Just like the most important question in cannabis and culture today, what would it be in your mind? And I throw that up amongst some amazing minds here in hopes that we can have some resolve. Like we want to talk about this moment because this moment won't happen. It won't be here tomorrow. Today, in culture and in cannabis won't be tomorrow. What does that mean for you today, and why are we here? What is the most poignant thing that we can be discussing right now?
Well, thank you so much. There's so much, obviously, that we can discuss, but as it relates to hip-hop, 50 years of this incredible culture born right here in New York City, and cannabis, which has been interwoven, if you will, with America's popular culture, which begins with jazz in the teens, actually. And so, it's a long story. I immersed myself in it more so than I had known in the research in making the film Grass is Green. It was enlightening for me. You learn a lot in documentaries, but knowing hip hop since its inception, super powerful to see these changes that we're living through right now. So it's a dynamic time for sure. Just like hip hop fought a strong fight when nobody really was checking for us and what we were doing and what we were trying to say, and we fought that fight, which we continue. Right. And cannabis is very similar. So many levels, so many dynamics, so much abuse from this magical plant, flower power for real, that has killed no one, yet we have to unravel this Gordian knot of abuse and torment. So there's many things we could talk about, along with the fact that there's probably over 10,000 mentions of cannabis and its various nicknames on the 100,000 hip-hop songs that have been made. And I'm just guessing on them numbers. I'm sure it's a lot more.
That's data to me. That's data to me, coming from an experienced mind such as yourself, who has experienced hip hop in such a way. And the reason why I don't mind laying such a heavy question on you, because making Grass is Greener, there was an impetus. You know what I mean? I think you saw, what's coming. When you see culture and hip hop, I want to just say to Dashida Dawson here, who I can introduce as and have before as the founding director of Cannabis NYC. Right. Y'all clapping. You are obviously clapping because you know the work that she has done. How do you make sense of the experiences that Fab Five Freddy has expounded upon, made clear about the intertwining of our culture and how we get some justice out of it from the government?
And I am the government. I still have to remind myself every day when I look in the mirror. So yes, I'm Dashita Dawson. I'm the founding director for Cannabis NYC, and I'm thrilled to be back home. I'm from Brooklyn, so coming back after now almost 7 years in this legal cannabis industry to really lead here has been really just personal to me. And I think it stems from looking at the history, and you said it started in the teens, really this idea of disruption of black and brown spaces through government policies that cannabis was really, or weed, or marijuana, the devil's lettuce. It was what was the undergrounding. And the government was used to prop up propaganda throughout the 1930s into the 1970s with the Controlled Substances Act and the whole idea of the war on drugs. Through the 80s with the, concepts around say no to drugs. And this is a time that I remember vividly as a young girl in East New York. It also gave sanctioned violence to these communities as well, using cannabis. So I just think, in general, I'm a little upset about it. I'm not going to lie. I think the more I hear, the more I learn, the more irate I got. The more Brooklyn, I was like, yo, WTF. Like, this is what the government did? And when we passed the MRTA, the impact statement that accompanied the bill outline a lot of these things for the first time in a legislation. And that's what made it a real turning point. It said, hey, the government is taking accountability and creating a law that's meant to help to address it. And so that's what's upon us right now. The state has been trying to implement with this equity-centered perspective because we know the damage that's been done since the teens. And we also have examples of other areas where it was wholly community-based and community income that was being moved, like in the numbers game, and then when the state took it over, all of that income left those communities, and we no longer saw that ownership. So we have enough data and details from the history to prevent that from happening again, prevent the disenfranchisement and the systemic racism. But it means calling out, as a government official, calling out when we're doing it inadvertently and standing up in meetings internally for what's right, but for what's equitable here. Yeah.
That sounds like, pardon me as a revolutionary, that sounds like revolution. And I gotta say that in the face of what we have to say to change policy. That changes our lives. And we can really implement real regulations that govern our lives. That's changing policy. And that's who you represent to us, and a big question for us in the form of cannabis. And so I got to take my hat off to you and thank you for that fight in that way, and being that representative. To my real hat came off. Shice, I got to say, introducing Shice Bubs to the table, co-founder and co-owner of Smokers Club, host and founder of Legacy Podcast and Heavy Smoke.
Right.
Big Smoke. You hearing this, and you hearing and this how we're unfolding this discussion tonight. I think from someone who has, I think of my legacy on Brownsville blocks, and this is truth. This is places where we were shook down every night, coming from the studio. By whatever the undercover D's department was in Brooklyn, who went under a lot of fire. It's so crazy, I should remember this, as we were the ones who were laid down in the streets and told by the police to take our hands out of our pockets, and all we had was weed in our pocket. And from someone who experienced life from our perspective as being attacked, but also carrying that legacy forward. We talking about, there would not be, cannabis would not have the name that it has in the world, nonetheless in New York City, if it were for, the carriers of this culture in the form of all the greats that including Shice Bubs. What is your vision of seeing, we've heard grass is greener, we see what Dashida is fighting for to make clear. What's your vision of of how this can really be? How can we really exist as a real legacy community now, in your mind? Where do you see you belonging in that, if I'm clear?
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. What's up, everybody? My perspective on it is that, being a victim of, I say victim, I'm not a victim of anything, but I am a victim of the war on drugs, right? And what that entails, people be like, what does that mean, victim of the war on drugs? It means waking up in the morning, right? First thought, how am I gonna duck the police today? How am I gonna not go to jail today? This is just over weed. This is not even about anything else. And this is about having one bag of weed, like your morning blunt. Imagine being targeted for your morning, the first blunt of the day. First blunt of the day, you getting ran down on by the police, going to jail. It's crazy.
Right.
No, for real, and this is not for every race. Now, there's some white boys that be uptown, and they've been a victim of it too. They've seen it, they witnessed it, they might have let go, they might have spent the night in jail, just like the rest of us. This is not like we go to jail and we stay in there forever, you know what I'm saying? But it's just a disruption of the day, and your auntie, your mother, your uncle, they're like, oh, he's back in jail. Jail is jail. I don't care if it's for one day, if it's for 10 years. The older generation is looking at that as something bad, you know what I'm saying? So, when we come to this time where we're at now, and I look back, I'm like, wow, even though I was one of the strong ones, and I speak that just for myself because, I'm an anomaly.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
You're still here.
I'm still here, and every year I progressively move forward in cannabis, from having a record label to being that for 8-9 years, since 2000, to having a touring company where I'm still on the road with all the young artists, using them as a platform to be the marketing tool for cannabis. Because I'm not gonna lie, coming from the black market, all I really cared about was weed sales. I didn't really care about the music sales, none of that. I was making really more money with the weed than I was with the music at that time. You know what I'm saying? So, but I still think about it like, wow. So all these people that getting in the game, they're using the blueprint from the legacy market. But guess what? You have 1,000-yard head start. And you've always had it, 1,000 yards. That's a long head start.
That's right.
Which I persevered through, which many of us, it's not many, it's a conglomerate of us. You know what I'm saying? We by family and association of who we know in New York City. New York is big, but it's small at the same time, especially when it comes to the cannabis culture and being victimized and going to jail. For some time it was a jail culture. It wasn't even this exotic thing that we promote now. You know what I'm saying? Fab Five Freddy is part of the exotic committee because, you know what I'm saying? Since back in the day, that's why.
That's interesting.
No,
that's
real
so
talk though.
interesting.
But real talk though, there's levels to it. I chose the path of exotic too, and kind of evolved into that because we all smoked Reggie. From our generation in the 90s, we all smoked Reggie, and we loved it. And we were buying weed every day. We'd go to the spot, go risk going to jail just to get it, go listen to some music. And that's the thing. For weed, you have to have theme music, and hip hop was our theme music. In the present, and it still is to this day. Now it's for myself being a little, getting older, my oldest that I've been. I reflect and I'm like, I'm back to the origins, I'm back to the original. That's why it's like an honest, sitting next to Fab Five Freddy, because I grew up on him, you know what I mean? Little guy coming home, Yo TV raps, what's going on, And here we are today. So where I see it now is just we still have a long road, and I just think that, empathy, not sympathy, empathy is needed for us to kind of find this common ground. You know what I'm saying? And I know people are like, what does he mean by empathy? Why is he saying it like that? But it's just you have to understand that 1,000-yard head start. no matter what you do, no matter how hard you think that you worked or that you did for your brand, we still had a 1,000-yard head start on us. So when we're not, performing up to potential of what, is expected of us, like, oh, you got the license, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to know how to do that. It's like, nah, we're 1,000 yards back.
Yep.
We haven't even had the training yet. We haven't even been to boot camp. We haven't done nothing but go to jail and try to be institutionalized to the brainwash of America. You know what I'm saying? I know you know.
100% understand, and I really thank you for expressing that full thought. I want to give that because, yes, clap that up. I need you all to really understand, because I think it's from the minds of people like Shice Bubs who are the block builders of what the future of cannabis is in New York City, and who will understand how to build it upright from the right foundation. And so I think we have to hear it clearly. That's why these conversations are important. And I have so much more to ask you, but we got a panel and we have questions, so I just want to move in a way that's going to be able to allow all this to happen. With that being said, we come from a place. I come from a place where the war on drugs was not just exacted around cannabis. Obviously, it was exacted around crack. We talking about Rockefeller drug laws. My mother herself was in jail, in federal jail, for 14 years. Around crack. So when we talk about building the prison industrial complex, we talk about the war on drugs and attack on our people, and it culminating in what we're looking at today. There's not a disconnected history, and this is the history that I've brought forth in my music, and not only myself but my brother Umi, who's traveled around the world with me for about 30 years, doing only 30 years, really spreading revolutionary culture and really talking about liberation in this form. So really like to have this conversation in this particular forum. We are taking a thin slice of the justice that we believe we are owed to just talk about cannabis. And I hope I'm saying that okay when I'm being okay when I say that to you, Umi, because again, this is one of my best friends in the whole world, if I can be candid. So I know his history. I know his mom, and I know his aunts. I know the history of struggle from SNCC in Alabama, Tuskegee, to here. So when you talk about struggle, this ain't nothing new. This ain't nothing new here. And so when I lay this question on Umi, I'm talking about being laid down on the block, being in Germany and for cannabis, being around the world and seeing how illegal this plant is to today. What does it mean to move from legacy to legal for you? What does it mean to move from legacy to legal?
Oh man, great question, man. First of all, you're doing a great job, Em, of piecing this all together. Give it up for my brother. And also, I want to, just at this moment, give it up to Ariel for just having a vision of forcing this conversation. A lot about pushing the needle forward is about communication. We don't do ourselves justice as a community and just fucking talk to each other. You know what I mean? It's a flaw of our community collectively, people that look like us, but our flaw as a nation. We don't communicate with each other enough to understand the intricacies behind certain things. So when you talk about cannabis, you are talking about ultimately something deeper than the plant. You know what I'm saying? And you wouldn't involve yourself in in any discussion that was just, one-sided. I can remember times being with this brother in places I won't disclose. Getting put down on our face for smoking, and I don't know if it was so much about just for smoking. I think a lot of things about what we were on was pushing the needle on the agenda of black circumstance pushing forward for the ability of the community. That's what we always been about. So as you sit here, as you talk about hip hop and cannabis, it's so ironic that we would have a pioneer such as Fab Five here, and as he spoke about, this, the collective idea of hip hop and how it marries, to cannabis culture. We have to now look at the mistakes we made as hip hop pioneers and how we don't own none of that shit no more. So as we start venturing off into the real reality of how hip hop and cannabis mirror each other, it's because it's the first billion dollar industry that we had fingertip access to. I'm talking about hip hop. And here comes cannabis, the second $1 billion industry that we have access to. Say it. And they take it from us. There used to be a time when we controlled hip hop. Now Seagram's Gin and Coca-Cola control it. This is not a mistake. And so when we talk about this idea of legacy to legal, we have to first of all use these comparisons to understand the mistakes. First and foremost. Now I love hip hop. I bleed this shit. I told somebody, I said, I would hope that you noticed, the struggles that I endured. Cause I breathe this, I live this, this is in us. But they took it from us, and we don't prosper off of what we've created. It's been going on for far too long. And so as we sit back and we watch cannabis now become the new cycle of and gateway into our culture, that's what it really is. How can we tap into what, and I hope nobody's offended, but how can we tap into what African culture is doing? That's what this is about. We make the TikTok of capitalism flow. Right. And if y'all don't know that about yourselves, you better fucking realize it. We can't be out here wasting our breath on our greatness. And so a lot of times we do things, great things, and we don't benefit from our greatness. And so the same thing is happening right now in the cannabis culture. And so it's my job as a guy that, and I say this like with grateful ease, because I got brothers here that did it with me. I'm talking about this Divine RBG, this dude Shice, but like 30 years we was putting our hand on this cannabis thing to really pay our fucking rent. Like, at one point, I can admit though, I had money. I still was selling weed though, because I just wanted to make sure I didn't have to pay for my habit, because I had at that point a serious habit. But seriously though, we've paid a certain price, and so now the opportunity comes around where it's popular culture, and who's benefiting the most and who's setting the regulations. Right, so what's more important is that we have a say-so in how the regulations are set. It's like I made this analogy before, but if you're sick, I mean, who the fuck do you go see? You go to the doctor, right? You need help with litigation, going to court. You go to a lawyer. These guys have certain amount of hours in their profession as it relates to understanding how to move forward. So you want advice on how to get into the cannabis industry. Who do you go to get this information? Right? I mean, I'm just asking, like, who the fuck do you go to? I mean, like, when I look at, and no disrespect, but when I look at what's going on in legislation and I look at who controls what, there's a lot of people that don't understand nothing about cannabis. They never did nothing. And some motherfuckers don't even smoke cannabis. I'm just saying, like, and that's why I could sit on a panel with a Dashida Dawson anytime that she is available. I'm not saying nothing but yes. I'm just keeping it 100. She shows and proves who she is based on who she is. And that's all you can do out here. So when we talk about just representing cannabis, there's a community that happened before you. And so you just have to pay homage to that and respect to that. And then you have to understand that it wouldn't have happened without them. So, I'm here for those people, and I want to salute everybody that, came here to support this, because this is important. The conversation has to happen, and communication is where it starts.
Make some noise for Umi. I know this panel ain't about me, but I'd like to indict the U.S. government for its traumatic treatment of my community. Real talk. If we can have a tribunal right now, I'd like to charge the government.
Bro.
Indeed. With the attack and unfair treatment of my community, the injustice that has been exacted against us. So many of us have been warehoused and imprisoned behind something right now that's been championed, that's healthy, and we even as Umi talked kind of lightly about it, the medicinal aspect of what we're talking about, which I think weighs more heavy than anything that we can talk about in this panel. I don't want to get too heavy on y'all, but I think that's where we're talking about. And so to talk about us who medicated, which is what we were doing, around this piece and being able to deal with colonialism and capitalism in this way. I just got to put that on the floor when I asked Dashida Dawson, how do we make this, what's happening in New York City, a pioneering movement in cannabis, more than this kind of shit show that's happened in many places, whether by hook or crook, whether by bad intention or good intention, in many other areas. How do we turn what's happening in New York into something that is a pioneering moment for cannabis?
Well, that's the reason why I came back. I actually got a chance to meet with the mayor today to represent what we've been doing so far at Cannabis NYC over the last 6 months since I was appointed. And really, we've been hitting the streets and going to the communities that have been disproportionately impacted. We recently did a liftoff tour stop at a Brownsville NYCHA community center. And real talk, I'm from East New York. I was, heart pumping, teary-eyed, but to see multiple generations that have been impacted from the way the policies have been put in place come to the table and have real conversation. We put ourselves through the gauntlet a bit because they step up to the mic and they have a lot to say about what they don't like and what they do like, but I think part of my job is really aggregating as much as that, synthesizing it, and then putting it into a strategy for how do we solve some of these issues. We have to repair a lot of what has happened, and I think it starts with education and equity. And so those are our two foundations at foundational points at Cannabis NYC. If it doesn't have education, if it doesn't have equity involved, then we're not even really going to consider it. And then I think even in our communication, we're not really here to gaslight anyone. I know I'm not. I mean, that's when it's not a job for me anymore, right? We're not going to change the narrative on what happened because we still have multiple generations that are here to tell the story. And so as long as that's the case, I want to get people engaged in our New York City Cannabis Policy Advisory Commission. And so we've been, talking to people within our community and business leadership to kind of participate. And then if the commission is a little bit more stiff for a little bit, you got to write it, and we're going to make a report. But the truth is that commission is going to be informed by what I call our 5-borough coalition. And that coalition is so critical to me because it's community-centered. It's business supported. We need money, we need businesses to support this, but it's government protected. And I think that's what's been missing. A lot of the other markets, the government is dropping the ball even when community and businesses get aligned. I think in Illinois, we saw community and businesses come together, and the government set up really slave master clauses that don't really put the money in the hands of the actual communities. Yeah. It's still the big companies. And so here we got to peel that back. It takes a little bit more time to make sure we're doing it. Fast isn't necessarily going to get us the impact we want. Yeah. It took over 100 years to really F it up. I feel like we really need way more than 18 months to actually roll this out, especially if we're doing it with the intention that we're trying to do it. But we are moving fast, and I will say I credit the mayor for appointing me, because by basically saying, hey, and he was calling me LeBron James, so I'm gonna step up and say it, right? But I want to be clear to him, and I've been saying we need to make sure I'm not on the Cleveland team of the first round, right? We need to make sure I got the second part, like the second Cavalier team that could really win it for a championship. So we are hiring, we're making sure we're growing as well. And I really want to make sure we're able to see the education in the community and in business in our office. But the last thing I'll just leave you with is that we also have to make sure that we're closing the gaps. The state is the state. I don't work for the state. I can answer a lot of questions about it because we work very much in tandem. Every week we're on calls. And even between then, I'm texting Chris and trying to figure out what's going on. But we also can close gaps because they have their own bureaucracy and we have ours. And as a city, we're a really big and important city, not just in the United States, but globally. They wanted me to come to Austria so I could talk about what's happening. It's Thailand, it's Germany, it's Australia, it's Ghana they're calling and like, what are y'all doing? And so we're setting a precedent, which means we need to act right and step right. And that means we need to work in coalition, and we have to put behind the petty particular beefs that we may have, and that's why I want a 5-borough coalition, because Bronx ain't going to do it by themselves. Brooklyn ain't going to do it by themselves. It's going to have to be all of New York City in a very, very clear formation and strategy, and I think the mission is clear. We want to be the hub, the global hub. It's going to be the #1 hub, and it has to be, again, equity and education, but it's business, science, and culture, and that's why I'm on this panel, because on the West Coast, the culture is appropriated, and it often feels really fabricated. It doesn't feel real, especially when you're trying to play like New York culture. Yeah. You can't do that. Like, there's certain things you just can't. The authenticity is here, and I think that that's what I want to celebrate. I want to be for the culture, but for science and for business, where we're really seeing that come from the community. So I'm excited. I know y'all can feel my energy. I hope. I can. Because it's like we got a lot of work to do.
Make noise.
Of course, but this is how we're getting it done.
I think the feeling that I get from you and the hopefulness. You are LeBron. You had more than on Cleveland. We need, like, my analogy is LeBron on the Lakers, because we need you to we need a ring here. Yep. We talked about right here. We talking about this 5-borough coalition. Let's talk about that, Shice. A community that has been distrustful of the police, a community that's seen years after years of kangaroo courts and injustice as it relates to all of us, and even police brutality. And I can name 100 brothers who've been beaten down, but that's not what this is about. Kinda it is, but kinda not. But we can also say there's a distrust, like when we talk about between our community and the government. Does Harlem synergize with what Dashida Dawson's rollout is? Are you on board? Do you see a ability to unite and make this kind of, and I don't want to call it utopia, but I'm here to play angel's advocate on this place. And with that being said, does that happen? Does our community trust that there's a coalition that can be built that makes sense out of cannabis? That you could step forward and say, nah, we coming to this. We going here.
I think that there are baby steps for that right now, like real small steps. When I think of Harlem, right, the war on drugs in Harlem, right, I'm not gonna say that it ended a while ago, but the neighborhood changed a long time ago. It became gentrified. Broadway changed. Like, Broadway used to be a place where, you were only there for drugs unless you resided there. Unless you lived in that neighborhood, you know, or worked in that neighborhood, you know, people were coming there for drugs. It was a hub. It was a hub for drugs in America, so to speak. But they kind of like, they figured out how to switch it up. So the way I looked at the neighborhood was like, I'm like, man, Harlem ain't the same. Where's everybody at? Rent is up. Who really lives in Harlem anymore? Unless you've been living there your whole life in your own property, or, you know, you're locked into grandma's crib or your parents' crib. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, where's everybody at? Oh, they moved everybody to the Bronx.
Right.
They moved everybody to the Bronx. So when I think about, you know, how do we in Harlem, see, in Harlem is different because we down with Dashida Dawson. I'm down with her. Whatever she says, it's a go, because we're progressive in Harlem. It's like, it's a little different. It's like, it is gentrified. You know what I'm saying? It's like, to me, it almost feels like the old Harlem from way back before the drug era almost. You know what I'm saying? Like that far back, where it's like, we live amongst each other, you know? But we're not scared of crackheads and
So it's possible.
drug dealers and shootouts, you know?
So for
whatever
you, it's possible.
whatever perception, even though it might not have been like that, whatever perspective you thought it was, from the news, from it just being scary outside, you know what I mean? But like I said, Harlem is progressive, and we support black people, you know, progressively moving forward in government and doing things for the community and trying to have some type of agenda and some type of voice. Even me, I'm here because of her.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Honestly speaking, so I'm with the move. I'm with the move of transitioning and having some type of, you know, platform to be like, all right, if this is the transition you want to make, this is the steps that you're going to have to take, because we have 1,000 yards back.
That's right.
And we don't know. She knows. She's right there. So you can ask her questions. She answers them. You know what I'm saying? She's good with that. So
The leadership is real. I just going to again salute. And the reason why I ask is because we need to know how, you know, is this a pipe dream? Or are we what we're really talking about is real? Does cannabis mean something definitely for black and brown communities who have been the brunt of the attack? You know, this war, do we actually benefit in any way? I'm gonna swing it over here to Fab, and I kind of, again, I'm piecemealing this, but this is an organic conversation that I hope when I begin to ask certain questions, we just kind of go with it. How then? You've been the voice for me. Definitely for me and my generation. When I you know, wanted to think about Dead Prez, when I was in Tallahassee, Florida with Stick, we were looking to your voice to define, and I ain't to age you because I feel the same age as you. And my point is, how do we, and because you know how movements are built, hip hop in itself has kind of been that. And you being, you know, the culture curator that you are, really understand it in an ill way. How do you feel we really build a movement on the side of cannabis in New York that really we feel in every household? Well, everybody smoke, yeah, we get it. But how do we take it on like as if people approach their Democratic Party or their local legislation? How do we make it like buying bread? You know, am I unfair in asking you, how do we build a movement like this to really make sure we get what we get out of cannabis?
Let me try to jump on that. So basically, what just occurred to me as I was listening, a lot of people reference the golden era of hip hop, which probably loosely was mid-'80s to mid-late 90s. That golden era represents a time when we did have a lot of control. This wild thing called hip hop, born in the boogie down Bronx when it was totally devastated with no love, roots went way down. And people started making records that was selling like crazy with no marketing, no promotion. Record companies was like, whatever. And then people said, listen, man, look at what's happening. Okay, people that was resisting us. And then they said, wait, really? This is what's going on? All right, you know, let me give it a try. And then things began to sell like crazy. So it was an economics component to this culture. Boom. That really kicks in the golden era of hip hop. Right. Okay, which is still the most dominant musical form on the planet Earth right now. This is the beginning of the golden era of cannabis. Wow. Right now. Okay? So when I made Grass is Greener, you know, cannabis has been in my life my whole life. If you see the movie, I touch on my parents, I touch on where I come from and how I got here. But I've been mad curious forever. I wanted to figure it out thoroughly. So I went deep. And then I got great voices to speak. And one of the voices that resonated to me after the film was made and on Netflix, which it dropped on Netflix on 4/20, 2019, I'm proud to say.
I saw that on that day.
Boom. And so when it dropped, I lost my train of thought here.
You were saying what emerged from that.
Right. What happened with the film, and one of the voices that resonated the most to me, that kind of almost haunted me, was something Killer Mike said. Cassandra Frederique referenced this as well. Like, she referenced this could be and should be our reparations. And Killer Mike said, yeah, also generational wealth, like that liquor brand that a black man made the formula. Was that Johnny Walker?
Yeah.
That was
Uncle Nearest was the one that mixed it up.
Yeah, it was Johnny
And that's
Walker.
a multi-billion-dollar liquor company.
Jack Daniels, part
thank
of
you.
it. Jack Daniels.
And the black man did, and then the white offspring said, let's tell what really happened. He's the guy that put this whole shit together. So when Killer Mike in my film, he said, man, listen, this is an opportunity for multi-generational wealth. It just really echoed to me, and it motivated me to kind of get busy. And organically, I created a cannabis brand inspired by what I learned in Grass is Greener. A black man was given a 13-year prison sentence in Louisiana. There's many people in prison for sentences like this. For 2 joints of weed, Bernard Noble was given a 13-year sentence.
What?
And
Wait, what year was this?
Well, he was given a 13-year sentence. He was in prison when I picked his case, because, you know, I'm telling the story of how cannabis is connected from jazz all the way to hip-hop.
And this is in Grass is Greener.
This is in the film.
And his name is what?
His name is Bernard Noble. And I met this brother literally as he walked out of prison. I interviewed his family. It was an emotional moment. I was like, wow, this is crazy. Went into the legal system in New Orleans. You know, even the former prosecutor was like, I couldn't do that no more. I saw how they was putting black people in prison and just being disproportionate the way justice is doled out. And how there's towns in Louisiana where those prisons are the biggest money earners, and so they do whatever they can to keep them filled. Look at Ava DuVernay's The 13th.
I don't want to cut you off, but I just got to say this, and this is crazy. Can you keep your train of thought right quick?
Absolutely.
There's a brother named Kevin Allen in prison who's right now about to do life for 2 dime bags of weed right now. Whoa. Right now. Yeah, and you saying this to me, I like Kevin Allen. Make sure I just joined the board of the Last Prisoner Project. Yeah. And in that, I've learned of so many people who are right now doing tons of time for cannabis to this day, even life. And Kevin Allen in Louisiana today, his court date is soon. I want to say coming soon. But remember his name, and I just want to say, like, from what you're saying, isn't it crazy, Louisiana, what the job that Louisiana is doing on our community still in the attack and the war, and so continue.
Yeah, so that's going on.
It's connected.
Yeah, so that's going on in a lot of southern states, unfortunately, and Louisiana specifically. And I got a close-up view on that, and got to cover that whole story. And these things began to echo for me, and I decided I wanted to do something, and I kind of term it entrepreneurial activism, if you will, because I said, man, we can do something, but I wanted to raise awareness about this issue. So literally, the brand is called Be Noble, after Bernard. It's a 2-joint pre-roll. The big cannabis company, Curaleaf, wanted to get busy with us in a very equitable fashion. We own Be Noble, me and my partner, and we have a licensing arrangement with Curaleaf. It's a very equitable deal because we also donate a portion of our proceeds to organizations that's helping fix the harm for those that coming out of this here system. So that was my wake up.
Make some noise for that.
Thank you so much.
Make some noise for that. Be noble.
Yeah, so now what we trying to do now, just to, once again, we're raising awareness about this, and Last Prison Project, I work with them. Also want to just say, it was a cat by the name of Jason Flom, he's the chairman of the board of the Innocence Project. He's got Wrongfully Convicted, one of the top podcasts where he delves into these issues. And he was the activist that raised awareness about Bernard Noble's case before it even hit my radar. So I'm tight with Jason Flom now. He does this work with a relentless passion. Just follow him on Instagram and see what he's posting every single day, 3-4 times a day, raising. He's also a very successful record producer. He's put out big hits on some pop shit and everything, but he's passionately driven. He tells the story that as a young kid, he had a little drug problem and got locked up, or got arrested. The cops knew who his parents was or whatever. The cops said, go on home, man. You know, he gave him a pass. But he knew black kids that didn't happen to and got caught up and got time like Bernard Noble got. So that turned him around in such an amazing way that has inspired me. And so basically, I could go on and on, but I think what New York is attempting to do, which is incredible with people like this queen right here and other people on the OCM, the intent is to really try to do this right. A lot of other states that I've heard have put down lip service and talked about what they wanted to do, but didn't really put it down the way I see them attempting to put it down here in New York. And there's going to be opportunities coming. If you want to get busy with this, you got to read everything online. The whole legislation is online. It ain't easy, but read it 4 or 5 times if you got to, and you'll begin to see some light as to where you might fit in and how you might get a piece of this, because there's going to be the ability to provide white labeling so that people can just create a brand and have a strong idea and get with some cannabis producers that are coming online. They're getting it together now upstate. And put some things in this market and figure out a clever way that hip-hop did without any support to market and promote and build a brand.
So, I mean, I think, thank you. A lot to build on there. You know, what we're seeing is like a vision of what cannabis looks like in New York City beyond today. I think affected by what happened yesterday. You know, I'm clear that we can't consider any balance or justice unless we consider all the wealth of information that comes from like this legacy market that you come from and we come from and the rest of us come from. You know, I think obviously we have to envision cannabis, this market, as a place that gets disseminated information that you can give us in this, you know, from a technical and even scientific background, but in plain English. We need the translators of us to be able to do that in a way that allows people to get the information up to date in order for us to act in time, to move, and be where we need to be to support, you know, that kind of movement forward. And what I'm basically kind of doing is tying in like what I think we have as a legitimate what do we call it? We called it in the movement. We call this the Central Committee. This is a Central Committee. I hope I'm speaking language people can understand, because that's how I move. I move in that way. So with that being said, I'm really teeing you guys up to be able to ask what you may need to ask from this kind of panel, who can say, after many years of seeing and witnessing what we should look like going forward, but we can't do that without us doing it collectively. Here, can we get an amen on that? Good. So get yourselves ready. I think again, this ain't I can ask questions of these people all day, but they all again some of these people I can talk to a lot. Sans 55 Freddy, who I would love to, but still nonetheless, what I like to kind of put out there, and before I kind of open it up, is. I don't have any more questions from this page.
We've been doing good.
Hey,
We're talking through
we can go to the audience right now
Yeah.
if you like.
Yeah.
We got
Great job.
thank you.
Sorry, I ran out. Let's go to let us please. Anybody got a hand up? Can we get a hand up from the audience? Anybody who'd like to engage with us at this point? Don't be shy. We smoke.
It's just weed, man.
We
It's just
we
weed, man.
partake. If they would let us smoke in here, they would. They told us, but they can't. Well,
We're not there yet.
because
but
that
we
does
will be.
encourage conversation. Family, come on. I know we're here. Anybody have a question for this particular panel? I have one more I can answer. I can ask. Yeah, continue.
So, as someone who actually worked on the 2019 decriminalization bill with the ACLU of New York, I want to ask, from your perspectives as individuals who are like leading leading voices in the cause, how do we encourage the everyday public to find out more information? Like, I say that asking because I think, like I said, working on the 2019 decriminalization bill, last summer I was in Times Square, and two police officers essentially lied. I'll just call it what it was. Lied about what the regulations were. Mind you, we already had legalized it here in New York last summer. So we were in a legal, that gray space because we hadn't had the regulations out quite yet, but it was legal. Yet police officers are not being truthful about, how people can go about essentially smoking and having cannabis weed on them. Right. So how do we just encourage the general community to keep finding out more information and then spreading that information to their friends, families, and networks?
Can I start it?
By all means, Umi, please.
Old school gangster told me back in the day, lead by example. You know what I mean? So what I do is I smoke. You know what I mean? And then that forges a conversation. You know what I'm saying? Because first of all, a lot of people are still under the illusion that cannabis and alcohol are in the same region. And unfortunately, the OCM thinks the same thing. Regulations are built based on what's popular culture for alcoholism. These two things are not in the same realm. It's just not. You know what I mean? And so we have to all do proper education as it relates to the crop. There's not enough information going around as it relates to our state, our governments, and look at what the feds think about it. Mm-hmm. So when we think about the knowledge that's derived about cannabis, the regulations that's put on edibles, right? You can't do but two. You don't know what I could do. That's not how weed is not like. It's not like alcohol. It's just two different worlds. First of all, edible shit is kind of based on your metabolism. It's not even based on the edibles in general. It's just a lack of information and a lack of research that's going on, but it's a lot of regulations. And so that's the first problematic, thing. It's a bunch of components here that we can fix if we as a community get behind it and say, yo, listen, you're not right about it. Shout out to Mario Shabinsky in the motherfucking building. You talking about real grower genetics.
Shabinsky, peace.
Mario, what's up, baby? The architect of gelato right there. One of the strongest, most known strains in cannabis.
Yo, shout out to just, the room again. And, a lot of times what happens is misinformation becomes popular. We have to be on top of our community to make sure that doesn't happen, especially when it comes down to regulation. You know what I'm saying? So I'll say that. I'll start there.
Dashida, please, by all means, be the beast that you are.
We not going to gaslight anyone. Everything you said is true, and that's ultimately why I looked in the mirror as jobs like this were coming available, and I said it has to be you. I'm a molecular biologist. I definitely consume cannabis for medicinal reasons initially, is what got me more doing it, but the reality is that cannabis is inherently medicinal, and we have to operate from that framework. I do want to also say that what I feel the pressure of the state has is to get this adult use market open, right? But adult use is a term that we use purposely in the legislation. We don't call it a recreational market on purpose, and I fought really hard to ensure that that was the case, but we still have media doing that. You know, cannabis is a plant that has medicinal, nutritional, industrial, agricultural, and spiritual utilities, and we still only using 30% of the plant. So the fact of the matter is we know we could go further, but I feel like we have this pressure on the adult use market not seeing it as what it is, which is more access for medical cannabis, ultimately. We use alcohol as our case study, but really for me it was an over-the-counter ibuprofen replacement, right? I could go get a prescription for 800 milligrams, or I could decide to buy a consumer brand, Advil, and put together my own milligrams. But I'm an adult and I get the opportunity to do that, and that's what adult use means. And right now we have a media slant where it's about, almost like an overshadowing of the culture, as like it's just about getting effed up or getting lit. And you know what? You can actually get lit, get fit, you could get lit and get well. There's a whole bunch of get lit and everything else, but we're leaving it behind. I'll give a shout out to OCM because I do think they do get it, but I do think the pressure of the adult use market is what is looming over the office. They do have some of the smartest people on covering the medical program. I'll shout out Dr. Nikisha Abel, who's a Black woman, who is definitely working to make sure that we roll out and enhance the program, but we do need education. And so I'm happy to bring into Cannabis NYC a partnership with the Association for Cannabis, Health, Equity, and Medicine. This is Dr. Rachel Knox, Dr. Janice Knox, Dr. Jessica Knox. The reality is we have Black and brown doctors that are endocannabinologists, okay? That means they understand the endocannabinoid system and really help you actually learn how to use cannabis, whether you're doing it, again, medicinally, recreationally, or spiritually, honey, right? Like, I want to shout out also to Dank Duchess, who is a member of the board for ACAM, who is here, but you can be for the culture, and that's an example with Dutch. Like, you can be for the culture and totally for the science and totally using it in the way that is really inspired and enlightened, depending on what you need. I wish I had cannabis when I was younger, real talk, in this way. And that's real, right? My son is 19, and I'm talking to him about how do we use the plant to enhance yourself and what you're doing. And I think that's a different conversation. And it does start with government starting to treat it a bit differently. And so I'm excited about the work we're doing here, and I'm excited that they put me in place so I could check people when you're doing bro science. I'm gonna let you know right away. That is not real.
Make some noise. So I think this is the elephant in the room. I think a lot of times what we're talking about as the elephant in the room is the fact that we have not been able to engage in cannabis as this medicine that we've needed. It's been great guesswork, you know what I mean? You know, like, I love all the OGs, you know what I mean? I came up, medicating on what I thought would definitely relieve what was the anxiety put on by the trauma that New York City gave to me. But it hasn't been an exact science, and I think that part of that is like being able to like put it in the center and figure it out, and I give props to yourself for being able to push it in that way and see it that way. Do you guys see it that way as well? Do you see it as medicine? Do you see it as plant medicine?
Well, I'm learning. I've been in an increased learning curve since making grasses greener, and then going around the country. One of my great regrets, unfortunately, I interviewed Rachel Knox, her mother and dad, but we had a 97-minute film, and it just, unfortunately, but that's when I first learned about the endocannabinoid system, which each one of us have in our bodies, specific receptors just for cannabis, which was mind-blowing.
Right.
The plant is really powerful. And so, and then from Dr. Shonda Macias, a black woman professor, has a cannabis grow in Louisiana. She speaks that at first we basically are medicating without actually being aware of it, which then makes sense of a time before doctors, medicine, and prescriptions, when all we had were plants and barks and things like that, which we knew were making us feel better and then aiding us in other ways without having all the science attached. That's how we got here for hundreds of thousands of years. So it's interesting to kind of learn now what this incredible plant really has in store for us. And because of the federal classification, it has cannabis on the schedule next to heroin, the scientists in the country have not been able to dig deep and find out more of the magic and special ingredients in this plant. We've been denied, and hopefully that will also change.
100%.
Accelerate.
So, and thank you for that, my brother Freddie. We need to hear you say that, because again, as like one of the people who really like help us see and ingest this culture in that way, to put that in our lens and include it is important. I know it became important to me. Can I call you Shaman Bubs now?
Oh yeah, I like that.
I love it.
I'm not gonna lie. Just like you said, like for a long time, I never looked at it as medicating. I looked at it as getting high. Like simple and plain. I'm trying to get high.
That's okay too.
Hey, that's it.
No, for real.
That's what I think is also
I'm from the era of
That's
like.
okay.
The era is evolved. They get the high now is a little different. You know what I'm saying? I'm not on that type of high, but. Even with cannabis, like they put grabba in and it's all these, we wasn't doing that back in the day. It's like we mixing the tobacco in the tobacco, like, in a joint, maybe a spliff, stuff like that. But, as far as medicating, I always use cannabis to create. Wow. And I use it, and, like my involvement with cannabis evolved to the point where it became spiritual for me. And I looked at it as a gift from the spirit realm, you know what I'm saying? Oh. And it gave me the ability to tap into my creative box or my zone or my third eye or whatever. And it allowed me to realize that cannabis was a tool that was given to us from the spirit realm from God basically to use for our survival on earth. You know what I'm saying? And when I got the gift, which was, I was already, I've been cannabis smoking weed since 1989. Right. Okay? Yeah. I may have revealed my age, but you know what I'm saying? It's just like, I looked at it like, all right, now that I have this gift of cannabis and knowing that this is what it's used for, can I push the limits? How far can I push it? I wasn't a rapper. I'm from Harlem, where you have to be on the corner with the top rappers to get approved. Otherwise, you trash, you getting dissed. You don't want Cam coming at you, you know what I mean? Like, and I became a rapper off of cannabis. I'm not gonna lie. I got into the music industry through a bet off of the fact that I had the weed, and I was like, yo, look, man, I bet you if I give one of these rappers some weed, I bet you I'll be in a rap game. Real talk. Real talk. And I seen Joel Santana, gave him some weed, Diplomats, and then Jim Jones. And, the day I gave him the weed, it was like, it was an instant relationship. It was like they came to my house, they got the weed, and they never left. Wow. They never left. And we made music.
But it was good weed, though.
It was exotic. It was like the Fab Five Freddy, the next. After
you
Branson,
had that Branson, basically.
Actually,
it was the next level.
How did you find that? What was
it?
It
was the next level. I was chosen. I was chosen. I promise.
Is any of that left?
Shout outs to my Dominicans on Broadway.
There you go.
The Dominican culture empowered me as a black African American to kind of like to break their culture of weed to our culture which was chocolate, which was the Branson chocolate, the bright green. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Barely you could barely get a jar of weed from Branson because it was hard as hell to cop. You had to pass the screen test. You had to know Mike Tyson or Fab or one of these. You know what I mean? Somebody had to be a little nephew or something. But the Dominicans empowered me, and when I say empowered me, I'm talking about billion-dollar industry already. Where a person like me, black, I'm doing $2 million a month for 10 years. That's right. Just to let you know, Right. And I'm I'm just a small piece of the pie of that culture. You know what I'm saying? So I always give shout outs to the Hispanic, Latin culture, Dominicans, you know what I'm saying, Puerto Ricans, Ecuadorians, Mexicans, all of them, because they were like, the pushers of mota, the weed, period. Yeah. Then you got the white boys who got some, they got some exotic. They're like, look, man, look what I just got, Look at this shit, man. You're like, holy shit, let me see that shit. Kind bud, what the fuck is this shit?
I can't wait to talk to you about the first time you ever smoked.
I smoked
the chronic.
Oh man, the chronic. I smoked that up in Ithaca, New York. And if you know about Ithaca, New York, that's the valley. That's like the home of the hippies. That's basically the motherland of weed. Branson probably was getting his weed from somebody up there in Ithaca, I'll be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to blow a spot up, but the weed that we had on Broadway from the Dominicans was the epitome definition of exotic weed. It's not what we look at today as what they say is exotic. It was different, I promise you.
I'm sorry for cutting you
off.
No. I just want to speak to that for a minute because it's interesting, this whole concept of the legacy market, those that fed themselves, took care of their families, dealing in cannabis through this long period.
More than my family. Like, when I say $2 million a month, that means, families is eating. Everybody's eating. Exactly. Not just in my city, right. Other cities. It's a hub.
I just want to comment on the fact that this is a unique example, as is my man Vlad from Happy Monkey. These cats that come from the legacy market that have been able to transition into the spotlight or whatever. This is not easy. And what I've noticed in talking to cats that was moving a lot of weight, cats that was supplying some of them cats up in Washington Heights or whatever, those dudes had PTSD.
Yeah, we did.
From decades of, once again, ducking, keeping your head on swivel, knowing how not to get knocked, AKA get busted. So basically, that's not an easy transition. So I just want to commend my man here for being able to transition from the legacy
Thank you.
into, what's popping right now.
That's real talk, fam.
But I think my spirituality...
But it's not easy.
No, it's not easy.
Spirituality played a major key. My spirituality was the key to my transitioning and my survival in the game. Because I'm not going to lie, since a little kid, I always knew that accepting change was the key to survival also. So as I was going along and keeping these, like, I don't want to sound cliche because I'm in a different space these days, but my Bible intuition about what's what carried me to be like, this is what it is and this is what I'm staying down for. Yeah. And I'm going to have rules. Yeah. Because I'd rather have some type of rules that protect me than having the rules of the government being in jail, locked up, be under scrutiny all the time.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So I always learned to play my parameters when it came to the law. And like right now, if I gave a course on weed, I would teach people how to sell weed, period. Not legally, just period. Because it's really only one thing. I always look at it like that. Like, it's grow from seed to sell. That's basically the concept of what weed is. It's nothing else. You grow it, get it ready, and then you sell it. And you make the money.
Say easy.
Shut up. That's it. Everything else is like, it's like business. Yep. It's like, what? Regulations. What you mean?
I also just want to drop a jewel on the fact, being that my man Mario Shabinsky is in here, who's like really, really an important cat. As I've
he was on everyone's list too. He was on everybody's list. Hello.
But as I've recently learned more about the importance of genetics, like they talk about strains, but then genetics, and there's cats like my man right there, Mario Shabinsky, that be in the lab, blending a little bit of this plant, a little bit of that plant, a little bit of this one over here, and doing all that stuff to get that plant right. So it's a unique experience, A to Z. It's really something special that I'm really just getting a grasp on and how that goes down.
I want to even speak to that even more, even more than a geneticist or pheno hunter or knowing terpenes or even some of that stuff. He understands the sacred science. So it's more about the land and respecting that this is indigenous people's land that was stolen. And when Shabinsky enlightened me about this is his process, these seeds are blessed. So we smoking the best intentions when we're smoking from this particular
Manifestation through the seed.
Indeed. And so, that meant a lot for me. And so, Umi, I saw you about to say some stuff, and Dashida, I haven't forgotten about you. I just want to say, you hearing all this, right? You know what happened. You know where New York was. We Brooklyn all my life. How do we go from where we've been, where you have been, traumatized behind sitting behind pounds and figuring that out on the block to beyond the dispensary, owner of Legacy, 98 Orchard Street. Anybody who doesn't know Legacy, you should make sure that that is a cultural center point and cultural destination for cannabis in New York City, Lower East Side. Just hosted Cousins, Salon Remy's art show there, and many more. And if you visit now, your life will change, likely. Because of what Umi's doing, how do we move from this life, from that life, to beyond the dispensary? What's beyond the dispensary?
It's a great question. And as we talk about how we felt back in the day, seeing DT, seeing police, man, I feel like that today. It's a feeling that cannot be resolved, unfortunately. We look at as a nuance with America. And that's just what it is. And until we all, as Americans, address the elephant in the room, I love it when your phone rings on the jump. But unless we address the elephant in the room and be accountable, it's not gonna change. I think it's no different. I smoke big wherever I go. I may do it a little different now than we did when we were young, because I know I won't go to jail. When I mean different, it don't mean amount, it mean how I do it. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like when I was young, I might cuff it, like lay low, but I'm still smoking. Well now, it's not, we're not being criminalized for it, and so they figure that that's all different. But it's not. It's not. It's a whole cadence that has to be addressed as it relates to the people that actually suffered, and that's the problem with it. We don't want to address that. We don't want to say, let's satisfy this reparation question. You know what I mean? And then move on as a nation. What happens is with America, just conveniently we want to brush it under the table and keep pushing. And we want to figure out ways to be capitalistic about it in our venture forward. And so we just got to be careful with that, you know what I'm saying? So as I see what's going on today and yesterday, I don't see a lot of differences. What I do see is our inability to actually, as legacy operators, to stand firm in our foothold in the industry. That's the only difference I see right now. I see that, damn, tomorrow may be tough for me to make $1 off this shit. Because every day you make it worse and worse for me. You know what I'm saying? That's all I've really been seeing consistently. You know what I'm saying? I want to see something different. I want to say, how can I come to the table with, 4 or 5 other cats that know 30 years about this shit and put you on to how to really move forward in the cannabis industry. I feel like if you guys are not trying to really give us licenses and really position us to really go forward in the industry, then there's not no real conversation that can kind of account for that, you know. So there's just a bigger conversation that has to happen for us to actually address how to move forward properly. But the fact that the conversation has started means a lot, you know what I'm saying? So we got to take what we take and then try to push it forward as we push it forward.
Let's try to talk about some of that conversation right here. Dashida Dawson, how do we, in light of the critique of what's happening in government today, if anybody has the ear to the street, they know that the rollout of dispensaries and the robust marketplace that was supposed to have arrived in New York City hasn't quite met certain, I guess, standards. How do you prevent the backslide into a black market, just complete black market activity? How do we go forward?
I think that's a question that I literally think about every single day. So I just want to make sure you realize that it's the top of mind for us. I'm gonna give a couple of scenarios because I also want to set the stage and a visual of like what we're actually trying to do. Because to everybody's perspective, I want to make sure I say for the record, we don't need the government to be able to grow good weed. Right. Like, let's just be honest. Like, we don't need that. And it's important that we acknowledge that. The government is trying to your point, capitalize on a reparative and restorative opportunity, I would say this government in particular, not all of them, right, to turn a tool for systemic racism into a tool for that reparative and restorative opportunity. And so to do so, I think automatically it's like putting a piece of candy around a pill, right? The pill of equity, which is, by the way, something that America, to your point, has never really done, is not something that our bifurcated political system is just gonna swallow. Right. It's just not. Whether you're talking about a Democratic or a Republican perspective, it still needs to be kind of, again, in this enclosure of the candy or the sweet of how much money is the state gonna make in revenue? How much money is the federal government gonna make in revenue? And so in order to play the game that the way they have the pieces of the board set up, we have to step in and say, okay, well, here's what's actually being built and what do we make sure come back to us? Number one thing I have to say is we can't sell the farm without knowing the value of it. And so oftentimes we're just so happy to get the police off our backs that legalization becomes the most important thing. I just want to be able to smoke without somebody harassing me. And we've forgotten until we got to New York about the cannabis tax revenue, which is multiple billions of dollars over the next decades that will come into the states. But what are they doing for our community? So I do think that's one area. And then the other is, yes, I need y'all to come to the table. It's a risk for you to be on this stage. It's a risk for you to drop your brands and say what you're doing, because at the end of the day, at any point, I think government could change, right? And then there's always the potential. But in order for us right now to hold the line on what we're planning to do, I need people to be clearly businessmen who have, women as well, who have years and decades of experience to say, no, government, this is actually how the game should be played. Government is risk averse, so they're kind of like, well, where's the proof? And I think for New York, this is the first time the legacy market is so big, we can't deny $2 to $4 billion a year of proof. We can't deny the millions of consumers that exist here, and we can't deny the operators either. And so I think it is right now a pretty good starting point, but we need to lean in because it's still, I think we're over-regulating in the state. I've said this on the record. I think it's New York, we got a lot of fear, and until people really start to understand that we've been responsibly consuming, it's been decades of millions of New Yorkers consuming cannabis, getting up to go to work, not driving off the road, and all of the things. Once we prove that on paper, we gotta be able to say, but this is the model we really need. It shouldn't be so difficult to get a license. It shouldn't be a lot of hoops, but I'm just saying the board is set in a way right now that we have to actually get our players on the board. And it's not gonna be easy. Can I just say one last thing? Please. Time-wise, I am looking at this like a big old jug of water that we're trying to pour into like 5 or 6 little jugs. All these licenses, that's not what, y'all don't got, you break up your licenses? No, you're selling weed, like you said. This is a big jug of selling weed that the government's like, okay, you gotta be a cultivator license and the processor license with 4 different areas. We can't pour that fast. it's going to spill out everywhere, and we're going to lose a lot of people. And I think that's why New York is taking a bit of its time. But that means you have enough time to come in and impact it and prevent them from making a mistake. And also ensuring that regulations, which can be changed, they can change them as soon as we cry out. But we need, bodies. We need voices. Otherwise, it's just me, or it's just, only you have that perspective. So that's why I'm just kind of keeping everybody, again, engaged. Thank you. We need bodies.
We have a question, if you don't mind, coming from the audience, from our esteemed comrade, Mr. Mario Shabinsky.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. How's
Come.
it going, friends? Thanks for this important conversation and for the love. But I really love some of the points you're bringing up, and I just had 2 points in response. I think 2 things to look at, and this is sort of how the industry and the policymakers kind of come and they get their money, but it kills our industry, is, for example, in California, tons of grow licenses being given out for a lot of money, millions of dollars that the California's getting, but not enough retail. So what happened, the retail, which all of us could easily access a license, we could all, have great businesses if we have good operations. But what happens is you oversell the cultivation and not enough retail, and it only takes a few years, suddenly the market drops. And it's happened in every single state. So the only way New York is going to change that from happening, because look, when all the money comes in, it's fresh, everyone's wide-eyed and excited, but then suddenly the competition, you're not the only one on the block. There's 10 people on the block. Think about if you open a Starbucks and then there's 5 different coffee shops on your block. You're not going to be successful. Right. And who's going to be successful? Who's got the biggest pockets and the more corporate money that comes in. So that's one point I want to make, that to speak to your point, and I love what you're saying, I think you're right on point, is up to us to have these conversations and be involved in this policy, because if we're not, and if we don't speak up, like Fab and everybody up here that I've seen speaking up, if we're not specific about what we're speaking up, then it's a slippery slope. That's one thing. Yeah. Secondly, our passion and our experience is our legacy, and that's something they can never take away from us. Yeah. And that's what the people with the bags will pay for. Yeah. The corporate money when they come in, so know your value, be proud of what you've learned in the black market, and that has a ton of value. Don't ever let anybody tell you that isn't value, because they can have money, but they don't have that experience. You need a time machine to go back 20 years, 30 years to have the experience from retail to whether you do extracts, edibles, whatever it is. So hold on to your passion, know your value, and I think that's how we, as a community, we strive.
Valuable words. I think if you've just heard what Shabinsky has just imparted on us, I think it comes again from a wealth of experience. I think we do have to aggregate what we've collected from different markets to be able to not repeat a really awful experience that's happening in many places. But I do know that it is in the process of happening. This is what we're in the process. As much decriminalization is happening, people are still getting locked up every day for weed, still, right now. You know what I mean? Like, it's happening. So the slowdown and change and redirection of this process is a lot up to us to ingest this information, and for us to not only do that, but act on it, use what we've learned and what we see here, but more. There are people in the room who have questions. Are there any more questions? Yes, come on.
I have one. A lot of times in business and in politics in New York City, there are metaphoric ways to say black, like Harlem, like Brownsville, like East New York. And I'm thinking about what we saw in Nashville, in Tennessee this week, and how the comparison can be made between the civil rights movement of the 60s, and how we're seeing Representative Justin Jones, Representative Justin Pearson getting in good trouble, and how people like John Lewis probably would have seen that as a great sign of success in the civil rights movement. And I'm wondering about things that Fab, you, and Shiest, you, and Dashida, you might be seeing from Harlem, from East New York, from Brownsville in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years that might indicate some signs of success. Like, if we see this, we might know that it's working, in places like Harlem, in places like Brownsville, in places like East New York.
I think it's people of color getting a shot to open up businesses, get their businesses stood up, get them up and moving, which once again seems to be the intent of the OCM and what, everybody's trying to do. So it's going to be a few years until they get all the kinks out. I know they said that they, a lot of times people think there's going to be a finite number of licenses, but I've been told that they're going to be open the way we have bars and liquor stores, throughout the communities. But I think there's an effort to try to make sure that the playing field is leveled as opposed to just lip service. And also, I think some of the problems we have is in various states, we have cannabis regulations that are put together by people that don't indulge in the plant. And then for 80 plus years, we've been scared to death. The war on drugs, from the reefer madness era to the war on drugs era, there's been a relentless, this is your brain on drugs. Once again, I go through a bunch of this stuff in my film, and it's not easy to deprogram a lot of this stuff. But this process has begun, and a lot more effort needs to happen.
For me,
yeah, go ahead.
I have a clear vision of success, and it really does start with the number of medical cannabis users that we have in these neighborhoods. We are very behind, sort of like when the wellness industry took off, it was like black and brown people were left behind. So if people in East New York, where I'm from, and again, a lot of migration due to gentrification as well, so we're now stacked on top of each other. If in these communities disproportionately impacted, we start to see more people understanding the plant as medicine, I know we are making progress, because a lot of them are afraid of it because of the way we were over-policed. And as a result, like the wellness industry, we're behind on what we can do for our endocannabinoid system for various ailments like the one I have, early MS, or just arthritis, or the number one killer of black women, which is stress, real talk. At the end of the day, we have a lot of imbalance that we have that are prevalent in our communities, and cannabis is still, in my opinion, the best medicine for it, and we're still so behind. So that's a real clear of like what success looks like, in my opinion, for that.
And with that being said, and in the name of ancestor John Lewis and from people who did struggle from Lowndes County and SNCC in Alabama, and who see what the Justins are doing, our representatives in Tennessee who stood up for simply not having kids die in school. If we were to simply stand up and do that kind of justice for people who need to medicate for cannabis, we'd have a different question today. And I do think it takes that kind of action. So I'm glad you drew the line of analogy between the direct action that got to be taken in, like taking over a hall of justice, or taking over wherever place that we think is beneficial for us to receive the type of care that we need, or medicate ourselves, or even feed our communities from this plant medicine that we need to do. So thank you for drawing that line. Anybody else who has a question? In the back, there's one.
Yes, hello, pardon me. Give me a second. What I want to say is, I want to speak specifically right now to Shice, M1, and Umi. You guys, you have to be careful about telling on yourselves. From the street, and we don't talk about what we did before. And the reason I say that is, you guys, and it's going to sound like I'm reaching, but all of you up there, you're like the Martin Luther Kings and the Malcolm X's of this movement right now. Like when Fab said that this was the golden age, it's the movement. And the reason why I say that, those guys was killed because of economics. What cannabis can provide is an economic change. Indeed. So just like the laws aren't where they should be now, but you got to understand, we might be a nation of laws, but we been a nation of unjust laws. Mm-hmm. And even when the law becomes just, you see what's happening to women now? Yep. What they thought they had as inalienable rights are being taken away now. So while you guys are sitting up there, you're putting the bullseye on your back, you're giving them more fuel by sitting there saying, I did this 20 years ago, I made this much, because the IRS can come after you at any time. So my recommendation is, you're going to lead us, you got to protect yourselves so we can help protect you.
I got to say this to that. You're right? Ain't that real?
I love it.
Ain't that real? Thank you, brother, for that protection.
I mean, that's real
that
talk.
Coverage.
Mike.
Thank you for that. I do. And I'm speaking to all of us who kind of endure that. I see Devon. I see you.
I love it. Let me respond to it
Umi.
first. Let me just say it real quick.
Go ahead, Umi,
Just real
first.
quick. Yo, first of all, brother, man, so much love to you for saying that. You know what I mean? Like, but let me tell you something, man. It's no bigger compliment that you give me to say I feel like a Malcolm X to you. You know what I'm saying? And Malcolm X died early. You know what I'm talking about? It is no bigger compliment you could give to me. You know what I'm saying? And so whatever will come, will come. And I mean that with my heart, man. And a lot of what I'm doing, me and my brother been fighting a good fight for about, it's been 25 some years we've been fighting a good fight, talking about how can we be vessels of helping our community see more for themselves. That's all I feel like kicking myself in the ass sometimes about our priorities. When I look at our comrades and our colleagues, they were thinking money first. When we was young, they laughed at us about the record we was putting out. That's y'all record? Y'all crazy? Yo, we did this with intentions that was so bigger than ourselves from the very beginning. It didn't mean shit about us. It was about what we was involved with and the people that we could touch and the people that we could help. And that's all this has been about. And listen, it ain't about being no martyr either. You know what I'm saying? Because that ain't what we about either. You know, we're not about that either. But what we are about is making certain sacrifices and holding accountability to be the ones that will. And that's all we ever been able to do. You know what I mean? Like a lot of this shit, motherfuckers came to us and said, yo, you changed our lives. And that's what we said we wanted to do. We wasn't trying to get the, you know what I mean? Like, and, you know, so I couldn't be mad at the effort, you know what I'm saying? And so now as we venture off into this new thing that we've always been a part of that has now become an industry to popular culture, what we have to do is secure what we know is right. And we have to make sure that you don't obsoletely look over the people that did this first. And as I started saying, there's no better comparison and situation to sit next to cannabis and hip hop, because the same shit that happened in hip hop talk about something that we built, that we now in whatever this year is, we don't own none of. You know what I'm saying? Like we the fourth paid in our industry that we built. We gotta make sure stand resilient together, no matter what it take, no matter what it say we had, because listen, we did do this. You know what I'm saying? And it's like you don't have no type of resilience to say that you have authority to regulate nothing that we're doing. And we have to be able to stand firm on that. You know what I mean? And so it's just, it comes with the territory, you know? But I want to salute you for saying that, because that sounds like community to me. You know what I mean? That sounds like community to me. So I love you for saying that.
Okay, wow, amazing. And we can go on forever. However, we've come to the end of this panel. But more than that, I got to say, we at this community are empowered by all the things that we bring to the table. And you can best believe that we didn't come to this table knowing that we're going to bring all of our experience or dirt to the table and not understand that the first thing we need to understand is there got to be a level playing court. There needs to be amnesty for whatever you think we ever thought we did. And on top of that, we need to go forward as an equal playing partner in this. And if with all the legal aid, the political aid, the spiritual aid that we can link arms and do together, I promise you, my brother, we're not going to let not another one of us get taken from us in a not righteous way. And so we come forward knowing that we're putting this on the line. All of us are sacrificing what we know we've put forward, but we know it's going to be for the greater gain. And I'm not going to let them take not one more of us. Matter of fact, I've joined the Last Prisoner Project so we can bring us home. Really, that's really because there's too many of us behind bars. So with that being said, I want to bring Ariel Pallets from the Office of New York City Nightlife, the curator of this panel, up on the stage to say the last word and finish this conversation.
I feel really emotional, but I'm going to get through it. I just want to express my extreme gratitude for this moment and for the trust and the friendship that you all displayed to allow me to convene us all here today. That's really the tremendous power that we have as being in the office, at the mayor's office, and having the history we do, is to be able to be a bridge, right, between the legacy to legislation from the past to the future. And we, It's been a long time coming, but we've also just begun. And we are at a very special moment in history, and no one does it like New York. And we've been preparing all our lives to restore justice and to get this right. It's too important right now, this moment, not to get it right. So I really appreciate you all being here today. I appreciate this panel. I appreciate this moment where we can all just continue to be a bridge in whatever way we can be to make sure that we go from legacy to legal to justice. And we can only do it together, and New York is going to show them how we do.
Okay.
So it's just the beginning, and we will make sure to invite you all. This is recorded, it was streamed, it was free, because we need to make sure that everyone is part of this conversation. And so thank you again. And for those who are in the room, the Fotografiska Museum, which is displaying 50 years with 50 photographers on multiple floors in this building, you are all invited to walk the halls of this exhibit, to walk through your history, to remember where we came from so we know where we're going and leave nobody behind. So thank you so much. And thank you to Fotografiska. Thank you to Wendy, Jacob, Team Nightlife, and all of you. Fab Five Freddy, Shice Bubs, M1, Dashida Dawson, and Umi RBG. Thank you. Let's stay up here and take
It's the real deal. I'm down by law. Who's that girl? I'm down by law. Wild style. Fab Five Freddy. Down by law.